United States didn't just have a couple of handguns in World War II, but their inventory was surprising. From the experimental prototypes to the battle-tested legends, let's take a look at every single handgun that took to the field. Let's begin with service pistols. M1911 A1, the legend. This was arguably America's finest pre-war handgun. It was powerful, reliable, and could certainly match the enemy's best. Unfortunately, production ramped up too slowly. Had more been available, things might have been very different. This was a .45 ACP semi-automatic pistol designed by John Browning. It featured a single-stack magazine holding 7 rounds, a short recoil operation, and exceptional stopping power. The A1 designation came from minor improvements made in 1926, including a shorter trigger, longer grip safety spur, and arched mainspring housing. Over 1.9 million were produced during World War II by Colt, Remington Rand, Ithaca, Union Switch and Signal, and Singer. It served every branch of the U.S. military and remained the standard sidearm until 1985. Colt M1917 Revolver, World War I holdover. It was one of the most numerous backup handguns used during the conflict. While rugged and highly reliable, it was severely outdated. Enemy forces often considered revolvers obsolete, especially once combat intensified. When World War I broke out, there weren't enough M1911 pistols to go around. The military contracted Colt to modify their new service revolver to fire 45 ACP rounds using half-moon clips that held 3 cartridges each. The M1917 was a large-frame, double-action revolver with a 6-round cylinder and a 5.5-inch barrel. Though considered obsolete by World War II, approximately 150,000 were pulled from storage and reissued to military police, guards, and support personnel. Its wheelgun design was slower to reload than semi-automatics, but it was incredibly durable. Smith & Wesson M1917 Revolver, the alternative. This sturdy design was intended for heavy frontline use. Unfortunately, serious supply issues and ammunition incompatibilities crippled its early deployment. By the time it reached the front lines, it was struggling against the latest threats. Smith & Wesson produced their own version of the M1917 alongside Colt during WWII. Like the Colt version, it was chambered in 45 ACP and used half-moon clips. The S&W version had slightly different ergonomics and internal mechanisms, but was functionally identical. Around 153,000 were made during WWII, and many were pulled from storage during WWII. The revolver's main weakness was that without the moon clips, extraction became extremely difficult. Mixing ammunition types, some with moon clips, some without, caused reliability problems in the field. Colt Official Police, the Garrison Gun. A slick design primarily used for military police duties, it excelled at garrison security patrols. This design spawned a wide variety of successful derivatives used throughout the war. The Colt Official Police was a medium-frame .38 special revolver adopted by many military police units and shore patrols. It featured a 4, 5, or 6-inch barrel, smooth double-action trigger, and 6-round cylinder. Lighter and handier than the heavy .45 revolvers, it was perfect for MPs who needed to carry a sidearm all day during garrison duty. The Official Police was widely used by civilian police departments, making training easier for military personnel. Variants included the Commando, Parkerized wartime finish, and the Air Crewman, lightweight aluminum frame for pilots. Now let's move on to emergency acquisitions. Smith & Wesson, Victory Model, the mass producer. This was a desperately simplified but functional wartime design. It was nicknamed the GI Special by many soldiers. However, a small contingent of rear echelon troops operated them with remarkable effectiveness during the campaign. The Victory Model was S&W's wartime version of their military and police revolver, chambered in .38 Special. To speed production, S&W eliminated cosmetic touches. Blued finishes were replaced with parkerizing, checkering was dropped, and polishing was minimized. Approximately 570,000 were produced during the war. The British ordered over 300,000 under Lend-Lease, chambered in .38/200, a .38 S&W round. American examples went to guards, shore patrols, security personnel, and anyone who needed a sidearm but couldn't get a M1911A1. Despite its utilitarian appearance, it was reliable and accurate. High Standard HDM, the silent killer. This handgun promised exceptionally quiet operation thanks to its integral suppressor construction. It was compact enough to rival the best covert weapons in the world. Sadly, the production lines were limited before the design could ever enter widespread service. The high-standard HDM was a .22 long rifle semi-automatic pistol fitted with an integral suppressor. HDM stood for HD Military, HD being the model designation. It was developed for the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, predecessor to the CIA, for covert operations, assassinations, and guard elimination. The pistol featured a 10-round magazine, fixed barrel, and a wipe-based suppressor that made it incredibly quiet. Only about 2,500 were produced during World War II. The .22 LR cartridge was subsonic naturally, making the weapon nearly silent, ideal for resistance fighters and special operations personnel working behind enemy lines. Colt New Service, the Veteran. An earlier generation design featuring exposed hammers and heavy frames, which made it clearly obsolete by the start of the war. It was relegated to training and reserve units, though some still served briefly in combat. The Colt New Service was introduced in 1898 and saw service in the Spanish-American War, WWII, and various border conflicts. It was a large frame revolver available in multiple calibers, though .45 Colt was most common in military service. By World War II, the New Service was ancient by military standards. However, thousands remained in inventory, particularly in National Guard armories and training facilities. Some were issued to Home Guard units, military police at stateside bases, and training instructors. The revolver was built like a tank, but was slower and heavier than more modern designs. Colt Detective Special, the compact option. This was a civilian design hurriedly purchased to bolster thinning armories. While quick to produce and reasonably reliable, troops complained bitterly about its small size and limited ammunition capacity. The Detective Special was a snub-nosed 2-inch barrel version of Colt's Police Positive, chambered in .38 Special. It was designed for plainclothes detectives who needed a concealable weapon. During World War II, the military purchased thousands of commercial revolvers, including Detective Specials for issue to officers, air crews, tank crews, and anyone who needed a compact sidearm. The 6-round cylinder and short sight radius made it less effective than full-size service pistols, but its compactness was valuable in cramped quarters like aircraft cockpits, tank turrets, and ships. It was also issued to generals and staff officers as a personal defense weapon. Finally, the prototypes and special purpose weapons. Colt Super .38, the Almost. This was a promising but ultimately unsuccessful prototype. While intended to be a replacement for older models, testing revealed it didn't meet the standards required for frontline combat operations. The Colt Super .38 was a commercial semi-automatic pistol based on the M1911 design, but chambered in .38 Super Automatic. It offered higher capacity, 9 rounds, and higher velocity than the .45A CP. Some military personnel privately purchased Super .38 pistols, and limited numbers were tested for military adoption. However, the military concluded that the .38 Super lacked the stopping power of the .45 ACP, particularly important in Pacific theater combat. The Super .38 remained a commercial success but never became a standard military issue. Some intelligence and special operations personnel carried them privately, appreciating the higher capacity. Welrod pistol, the British connection. This was perhaps the Allies' most modern and effective suppressed design. Its quietness allowed it to evade enemy detection during raids. Despite being an excellent weapon, limited distribution meant that few American personnel ever used one. The Welrod was a British bolt-action suppressed pistol chambered in .3, 2 ACP or 9mm. It was designed by SOE, Special Operations Executive, for assassinations and clandestine operations. The weapon was incredibly quiet, quieter than any other suppressed firearm of the era. American OSS agents working with British SOE received limited numbers of Welrods for operations in occupied Europe. The pistol featured an integral suppressor, magazine in the grip, and required manual cycling between shots. It was ugly, crude-looking, and absolutely deadly in the right hands. Production numbers for OSSUs were extremely limited, perhaps only a few hundred. FP-45 Liberator, the one-shot. The Wonder Liberator pistol, a very crude, simple design. It was part of a major resistance support program. However, distribution problems delayed its deployment, meaning only a tiny handful saw any action before the fighting ended. The FP-45 Liberator was a single-shot, smooth-bore pistol chambered in .45 ACP. It was designed to be airdropped to resistance fighters in occupied territories. The concept was simple. Resistance fighters would use the Liberator to ambush an enemy soldier, then take his proper weapons. The pistol was stamped from sheet metal, cost less than $3 to produce, and came packed in Cosmolane with 10 rounds of ammunition and a wooden dowel for ejecting spent casings. General Motors produced 1 million Liberators in 1942. However, military planners questioned their effectiveness, and most never left storage. Some were sent to France, the Philippines, and China, but distribution was limited. Most were destroyed after the war, making surviving examples rare collector's items today. British Webley and Enfield revolvers, Lend-Lease reverse. Under Lend-Lease arrangements, some American units, particularly aircrews and personnel working with British forces, carried British revolvers including the Webley Mark VI and Enfield No. 2. These .38-20 and .45-50 caliber revolvers were sturdy and reliable, though ammunition logistics could be challenging. American bomber crews stationed in Britain sometimes carried Webley revolvers as they were readily available and qualified as Allied standard issue.